Heitor Villa-Lobos and Choros number 3, Modernism, Nationalism and Musical Anthropophagy. This is the second part of a three-part presentation. Most choros, especially the Indianist ones, drew on primitivism and conveyed the most aggressive manifestations of Brazilian musical nationalism in the 1920s. Among other cultural elements, Indian primitivism was inherent to the nature of Brazilian society because Indians were part of the imaginary national landscape and became emblematic figures of the untouched essence of Brazil. By drawing upon Indian primitivism, Villa-Lobos connected his art to an immemorial Brazilian past and conveyed an authentic Brazilian outlook to his music. By using European musical techniques to display this Indianism, Villa-Lobos created an outreaching musical avenue to present abroad the Indianist essence of his country. In respect to the musical aesthetic of assimilating both local and cosmopolitan elements, Villa-Lobos affirmed, quote, "The original creator is that who, while demonstrating in his work the exact knowledge of the diverse styles of music, meaning here European music, employing in an elevated manner the folkloric motives of the country in which he has been living and forming his mentality, reveals in his compositions the natural tendencies of his predestination and the ethnic influence of his temperament, forming, therefore, the characteristic traits of his personality and of the country in which he was born." Unquote. Although Villa-Lobos mentioned only folklore, he also drew upon the popular choro and Brazilian Amerindian musical elements to compose nationalistic music that displayed what he called the predestination and ethnic influence of his temperament. In his influential and ultra-nationalistic essay on Brazilian music, Mário de Andrade theorized about the nature of Brazilian primitivism. Andrade suggested that, quote, "The actual period of Brazil, especially in the arts, is of nationalization. We are attempting to conform the human production of the country to national reality. It is in this thread of thought that the concept of primitivism applied to today's orientation is justifiable. It is a mistake to imagine that Brazilian primitivism is aesthetic. It is actually social." Unquote. Proceeding from Andrade, it is conceivable that expressing Brasilidade through primitivism in his choros was for Villa-Lobos a problem of social order, meaning that the aesthetic of this series was a result of Villa-Lobos' social and cultural conditions as Brazilian, not simply an aesthetic choice to guarantee his success in Europe. Mário de Andrade's thoughts on the essay were related to Brazilian modernists' strive to establish national Brazilian identity through their art. Oswald de Andrade's manifestos epitomized this quest of Brazilian modernists' aesthetic approach in the 1920s. For instance, the most celebrated phrase from Oswald de Andrade's Anthropophagic manifesto, "Tupi or not Tupi, that is the question," reveals much of the essence of modernists' philosophies. Oswald de Andrade used a well-known phrase from Shakespeare's Hamlet, but changed the original to be for Tupi, a native cannibal tribe from Brazil's colonial times that ate their enemies both to absorb their powers and as an act of revenge. Provocatively, Andrade subtly suggested that Tupis ate Shakespeare and absorbed his powers, in this case the powers of his emblematic phrase. Through allusion to Brazilian natives and the existential dilemma from the European structure of Shakespeare's celebrated phrase, Andrade profoundly and succinctly sums the primary concern of Brazilian modernists, namely the formation of a Brazilian identity independent of but historically bound to Europe, and which could be appreciated in Brazil as a synthesis of Brazilian heritage and exported to Europe as signal of artistic independence. The synthesis of both Europeanness and nativeness intrinsic to the structure of Oswald's anthropophagic phrase reflected the essence of the ethnic and social cultural diversity of Brazilian people and embodied the artistic philosophy of the Brazilian modernist movement. And with a little animation, we get to the end of part 2.